Today we celebrate the final Sunday of the church year, the feast of Christ the King. From the time of Constantine in the 4th century, for almost 1,500 years, the church grew in wealth, power, and control, becoming more than a kingdom, becoming in fact an international empire. But by the beginning of the 20th century, the marriage of altar and throne that had lasted for centuries was quickly dissolving. Atheism and secularism had arrived, and communism and fascism weren't far behind. The feast we celebrate today, the solemnity of our Lord Jesus Christ, King of the universe, was instituted in 1925 by Pope Pius XI. In establishing this feast, Pius XI sought to emphasize Christ's sovereignty over the whole world, a sovereignty that must no longer be defined by worldly criteria. This final feast of the liturgical year invites us to reflect upon the unique shape and character of Christ's kingship. While some might find the patriarchal and even monarchical language off-putting, we should look more closely at the character of Christ's kingship. Before Jesus' crucifixion, it is Pilate who gets straight to the point, asking, "Are you the King of the Jews?" The unfolding of the events that day makes it clear, yes, Jesus is king, a king who is crowned with thorns, who is robed in a royal mantle for the sake of derision, and who receives a scepter in his hand, which is a reed of contempt. This is a king who came from the backwater town of Nazareth in anonymity and poverty. He rules not as a tyrant, but as a simple shepherd who, as Ezekiel foretold in our first reading today, will seek out the lost, bind up the injured, and heal the sick. And St. Paul told the Corinthians in our second reading, the purpose of Christ's reign is to destroy all that would stand in the way of the redemptive power of love. This brings us to the gospel scene of the Last Judgment, where the Son of Man is seated upon his throne, and all the nations are assembled before him. We have to look carefully at the text, for it does not say that multitudes of individuals are being separated into sheep and goats, but it's the nations that will be judged. The nations are being separated. It is the nations which will be judged on these acts of mercy, these acts of charity, these acts of justice. And the hard question is, how will we, as a nation, be judged? We live in an imperfect world. It was created perfectly by God, but then Adam and Eve sinned, and their children sinned, and their children after them sinned, and again and again and again, until just a few seconds ago, when the sinning continues through one of Adam and Eve's great, whatever it is, grandchildren, children who have sinned again and again. The effect of all that sinning throughout history up to a few seconds ago is to break down the perfection of the world God created, to tear it apart at its seams, to destroy its wholeness and its integrity. Now, Jesus came to reclaim that world and to restore it to its original grace and glory. For that he suffered, died, and was raised up. But despite his sacrifice, we continue to sin, and the world continues to crumble apart. And the world we live in, with all of its brokenness, is the result of all that sinning. My sinning, your sinning, everyone's sinning. It destroys the fabric of this world in all its beauty, its oneness, its completeness. As a nation, we have felt the effects of this sinfulness and the crumbling of the world around us in a close and personal way in these past several months. The wars in the Ukraine and Middle East have made us acutely aware of how deeply divided we are as a world. And the growing violence we witness in our own country affirms that this division is on our own doorstep. Not only the vitriolic rhetoric and the open hostility towards individuals and groups, but also the emphasis on 24-hour nonstop commentators highlight the depth of the chasm among people of this country and the intensity of the pain of so many. The jolt we feel in recognizing this acute alienation is akin to receiving a diagnosis of a serious, life-threatening illness. We feel shock, disbelief, anger, numbness, frustration, and an overwhelming awareness of just how clueless we are about all that is around us. How are we to move forward? The work of moving forward cannot be the task of just some of us. Rather, we all must come together for the common good of all, of individuals, of the country, of the world. We live in an imperfect world which continues to unravel around us because of sin, but it continues to heal because of grace. It is God's work in which we are all called to share. We come today together at this table, today and always called to be one. And we come to this table like any family table with our differences and our longing to be one. We come to this table, all of us sinners and all of us struggling to be better. Our parish motto says it in 6 words: diverse in background, united in faith. We come here to be reconciled and to have the strength to be prophetic when the world needs to hear another voice, a voice that so many long to hear, a voice of comfort, a voice of healing, a voice of hope. We come to this place knowing that we cannot and must not be separated. We must move together into the future and take up the work of building a better future, a better country, a better world, better cities, better neighborhoods. In the end, we may not be perfect, but we still can all strive to make it better. In the end, we will not be judged just on what we have done in our own lifetime, but on what our nation has done in our lifetime. May we work together for a better world, so our nation will be judged as righteous and invited by Christ the King to stand with the sheep on his right side.